Good morning. Whether you are here in the sanctuary or watching from home, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert. I'm Bryna Blum, your worship associate this morning, delighted as always to be up here in support of Reverend Ian. Before we begin, please take a moment to silence any and all cell devices. Here, as we do every week, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the unceded lands of the Agua Caliente Band of the Cahuilla people. As we commit to grow in our understanding and relationship to this land and with the people who inhabited it and nurtured it before our arrival. In this congregation, where we strive to honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person, we welcome people of all races, religions, and cultures. We welcome you wherever you come from and whoever you love. You are welcome here, no matter your sexual orientation or gender identity, your age, your size, whether you're rich or poor. We welcome all those who will learn and grow with us as we commit together to embrace the rich and beautiful diversity of the world. Our goal here is to build a community centered in justice, in compassion, and in love. We're glad you're with us this morning, whether you're here or at home. We're very, very grateful for your presence. We'd like to take a moment now to greet newcomers or visitors. If you're here for the first time and are comfortable doing so, please raise your hand and an usher will come to you with a mic. At this time, please tell us just your name and where you're from. We look forward to learning more about you at coffee hour. Is there anyone here for the first time today? Okay. If you want to learn more about us or our programming, please contact the office at admin@uucod.org or on our website. And now please join me as Reverend Ian rings the Tibetan bowl and we listen to Malcolm play our music for centering to start the service.
And again, good morning. I am the Reverend Ian Riddell, and I have the honor and delight of serving this congregation as its minister. However you found us, however many times you've been with us here, or in person, or online, welcome. We are a congregation and a tradition that celebrates the richness and beauty of individual lives and commits to working together to weave a tapestry made stronger and more vibrant by our collaboration, and by the sharing of our lives and our visions of a thriving future for all of life. We strive together to craft a beloved community of resilience, hope, and love in the face of fear and anxiety and apathy. We practice the opening of hearts, the working of hands, and the lifting of spirits in the service of love. We share the sacred breath. We gather together to build the beloved community, breath by breath, word by word, note by note, stitch by stitch, step by step, and thread by thread. We gather together to sing and speak and dance and breathe and knit and weave the beloved community into being. This is our work. This is our calling. This is our joy. Welcome today. We're going to continue to begin our service by singing together. We're going to sing a song that was written by Starhawk. Many of you know Starhawk, a pagan leader, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this song a little later in the service. But we've done it before, and I want to remind you of how it goes. The words will be on the screen above me. It goes like, Malcolm, could I have that? I'm going to sing it once through, and then I'm going to teach you the parts, okay? Weave and spin, this is how our work begins. Mend and heal, take the dream and make it real. So I'll sing a little phrase too, and I'll invite you to sing it back to me, okay? Weave and spin, in your turn. Weave and spin, This is how our work begins. This is how our work begins. Mend and heal, mend and heal, mend and heal, mend and heal. Take the dream and make it real. Take the dream and make it real. Let's try the whole thing together and weave and spin, weave and spin. This is how our work begins. Mend and heal, mend and heal. Take the dream and make it real. So a little musical trick for you to help it make it a little easier. Just lean into that first part of each phrase. Weave and spin, weave and spin. Don't hit it, just lean in. This is how our work begins. Mend and heal, mend and heal. Take the dream and make it real. Weave and spin, weave and spin. This is how our work begins. Mend and heal, mend and heal. Take the dream and make it real. Weave and spin, weave and spin. This is how our work begins. Mend and heal, mend and heal. Take the dream and make it real. Once more. Weave and spin, weave and spin. This is how our work begins. Mend and heal, mend and heal. Take the dream and make it real.
Please join with me for our chalice lighting and unison aspiration. The words are above me. May love be the spirit of this church. May the quest for truth be its sacrament and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration. And now if Pam Watson will come up to light our BIPOC candles. Again, please read along with me. We light these candles in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and other people of color as we journey together towards spiritual wholeness. May we, as a beloved community, work to dismantle racism and all forms of oppression. May we live out our principles so that justice, dignity, and equity for all prevail. Reverend Ian sent me this reading, and my only response to him was, this is like a mega metaphor for life. It's called Team Knit 2024. It's a blog post by Stephanie Pearl McPhee. She's writing about fundraising for the annual Friends for Life bike rally in Canada. Cyclists ride from Toronto to Montreal to raise money for people living with HIV/AIDS in Toronto, Kingston, and Montreal. And it goes. A big part of what fundraisers are trying to overcome is that almost nobody has a spare $1 million. And that means that most donations are going to be rather smaller than that, to say the least. Now, most humans are smart enough to look at a problem and realize that some money would go a long way to helping, but understand it would have to be a lot of money. Then they realize they don't have a lot of money. They can just spare a little bit and don't donate, because there's no way that $10 can solve a problem, and so they don't give anything. There's other people, though, people who understand the concept of cumulative action. And those people are different. Those people have learned somehow through experience or education that a small action isn't futile. If it's combined with many other actions, and those people will indeed take a small action or make a small gift because they know their little piece is an essential part of something big. Fundraisers love these people. This kind of person creates really differences in the world. And guess what? All knitters understand cumulative action. Every single one of them. Knitting teaches you that one small action does matter. That one small action, like knitting a stitch, isn't unimportant. It's vital. One small action repeated many times is a sweater, or a shawl, or a pair of socks to hold the feet of someone you love. And that idea, the concept of cumulative action, it makes knitters the most remarkable fundraisers of all. There's a reason behind this. You'll hear this again at the end of January before stewardship. Other groups, they have to rely on the small part of their community that understands that. Knitters, our whole group gets it. Our whole group sees that one small thing put together with many other things can create something enormous and wonderful and magical. More than this, there's a bonus, and that it feels great. Taking a small action that becomes huge in cooperation with your community is a remarkable way for people to know what it must feel like to make huge gifts, to be a philanthropist, to know that they're actually taking an action big enough to create real, tangible change and difference in the world, to become someone who is shaping that world, to lift the feeling that nothing matters, that you can't do anything, that it's all out of your control. It's not at all. You're just not going to do it by yourself.
With that love, with that kindness, with that goodness, with that hope in our hearts, can we pause now for a time of quiet, of reflection, and of prayer? Spirit of life, we are gathered together in a country, in a world that is overwhelming. Country and a world full of anxiety and fear, full of violence and angry rhetoric. We come to this place carrying it all with us. And we come to this place with joy, with love, with care for each other, with invitation into each other's lives. We come to this place to see the sparkle of laughter, hear the sparkle of laughter and joy, see the twinkle in each other's eyes, feel the touch of each other's hands. Just know that we are in a place where we are loved, where we are accepted, where we are held in accountability and hope. We have come to this place today, bringing our weary and joyful hearts. So we pause together with that hope, with that love in our hearts, and we pray, we wonder, we challenge ourselves to find the place where we can change that love, use that anger to make a difference in this world. To know that we may not be able to do everything, but we can do one thing, and then another thing, and then another. Always grounded in hope, always grounded in a vision for justice, always grounded in kindness and in love. We pause now in the middle of our service in quiet, in the embrace of that love, in the hope of that kindness, and in the vision of that justice which we, in our own small ways, will help bring to the world. May all beings know peace. May all beings know an end to suffering. May all beings know and share and live love. Will you join your voices with me, friends, as we sing Spirit of Life, Fuente de Amor. Spirit of life, come to me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí, ya corazón, cántale tu compasión. Sopla al volar, sube en la mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arráyame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí. Amen to that. Friends, I'd like to invite you to think back to a time when you learned a new skill. May have been 50 years ago, may have been yesterday. Something you'd never done before, or a different way of doing something than you already knew how to do. Perhaps someone taught you how to sew buttons onto a shirt. Or you found a book or a YouTube video that showed you how to write a haiku, or braid your hair, or pickle cucumbers, or detail your car, or plant tomatoes, or dance Tai Chi, or sew a shirt, or balance your checkbook when those existed, or speak French, or clean the grout in your shower, or read or write the alphabet, or write parallel structures in your sentence, or sing a song. It's possible you picked it up instantly, but I think it's probably more likely that you might at first have been intimidated by your lack of knowledge or skill. The work looked so big and daunting, the path to competence seemed a very long one. And then the person teaching you broke things down into smaller steps, discrete actions or segments of knowledge, and invited you how to figure out how to do those things. And then move on to the next step, and the next. Perhaps adding one action, one after another, or doing more than one thing at a time, but small parts first, and then bigger ones, until the whole thing was there in your hands or your voice or your mind. Each step was something you practiced over and over again, repeating it until you had it down pat. When I was learning piano, I was invited into this repetition. I really hated it, but so that my hand and arms would gain muscle memory for how to do something. so that I didn't have to think about it every time it came along. My fingers knew what to do. There are piano pieces that I learned when I was 16, that if I picked the music up now, I'd struggle through a bit, and then my hands would take over. My brain might have forgotten, my body didn't. Well, when you learn how to knit, at least if you do it in a conventional way, this is what you do as well. You either find someone to show you, or these days perhaps a video on YouTube, to show you how to just do a plain, simple knit stitch. Just that one thing. And then you do it over and over and over again until it's in your hands, until without having to think each discrete step, put the needle through the old stitch, wrap the yarn around the needle, pull it through the old stitch, drop the old stitch off the needle. You can just think knit. And your hands do what they need to do. Now, this doesn't happen in a vacuum, of course. When you're doing knit stitch after knit stitch after knit stitch, you are creating something, a fabric, in fact. And you don't really want to waste that creation, the time, the yarn, so you learn to make something real that will help you practice this stitch. Now, I think about hearing people talk about learning how to, when they're learning to cook, learning how to develop skill in proficiency in chopping and slicing onions, and how rather than waste onion after onion after onion as you practice, you also learn how to make onion soup. In knitting, the first project is usually a scarf. Row after row of knitting stitch after stitch after stitch until hours and hours later, you have something in your hands you can wrap around your neck to keep you warm, even though it might look a little rough at first as you slowly figure out how to hold the yarn and the needles and make the stitches consistently and neatly and predictably, stitch by stitch. And then you learn how to do the purl stitch, and you can make a different kind of fabric. Then increases and decreases and knitting in the round rather than flat. And then you combine all of that to make a huge variety of different things, some large, some small, and then you think, I know what I want to knit, a blanket. Now think about blankets. They keep us cozy and warm. They cover us up when we have a chill wrapped around our shoulders or across our lap. We drape them over our beds, over the backs of sofas and chairs to bring some color and texture and beauty into our homes and offices, beauty and utility, grace and practicality. And you think, how hard can that be? The easiest blankets are just like scarves, knit every row until it's as big as you want it to be. And so you start. You cast on more stitches than you've ever cast on for anything before, and you start knitting and knitting and knitting and knitting. It's a lot of knitting. I mean, let's say you're using a medium weight of yarn and you want to knit a baby blanket, 30 inches by 32 inches, not that big. And so you cast on 135 stitches and you start knitting every row 135 stitches, and you get to a piece of fabric. To get to a piece of fabric that is 32 inches long with this yarn, you'll need to knit about 176 rows. And that means, some of you are already calculating in your brains, and that means for the relatively small blanket with medium-sized yarn, you're going to knit 23,760 stitches. That's for a smallish baby blanket. Think about a queen-size Afghan. A blanket is a commitment. It's a lot of work. But it's not lacy all usually or a doily. It doesn't have to be that intricate. It can just be knitting or knitting and purling a lot. And the way you get a blanket is not by making the whole blanket all at once. It's by knitting one stitch after another stitch after another stitch. Sometimes days and days go by and it looks like you've been doing nothing, but slowly over time the pile of yarn in your project bag gets smaller and the object in your lap gets bigger, and there's a blanket. The world around us feels like it's in chaos and coming apart at the seams. Like everything we thought we knew about how society and our relationships were supposed to work is being called into question by people with values that we don't recognize. Power and influence are being wielded by people who don't seem to understand the beauty and worth of human lives. And maybe you're struggling to understand, maybe we're struggling to understand how we're going to survive, how we're going to protect our neighbors and our children, how we're going to figure out what to do about it all. And your minister is standing up here waxing poetic about knitting blankets. But let's put aside the fact first that making blankets for people, for other people, is an honorable and loving way to show them that we care, that we love them, to give them something to help them take care of themselves. Maybe don't put it too far aside. That's actually really important. But for now, why might the practice of knitting blankets be meaningful to us right here, right now? Remember what I just said. The way you get a blanket is not by making the whole blanket all at once. It's by knitting one stitch after another stitch after another stitch. Sometimes days and days go by and it looks like you've been doing nothing. But slowly, over time, the pile of yarn, your project bag gets smaller and the object in your lap gets bigger, and there's a blanket. I want to draw your attention to the music Malcolm is sharing with us today, especially the gathering music and the postlude. Both Bach and Pachelbel, both Johanns, in these pieces take smallish things and use them to build something larger and more profound. Bach takes a small melody, and by repeating it and modifying it and playing it on top of itself, he creates complex, beautiful music, all from the smallest of melodies. And Pachelbel takes a simple, ordinary chord progression and repeats it and repeats it and repeats it, creating a base upon which he and the performer create moving and changing music, all from those 8 chords repeated over and over again. Vincent van Gogh is thought to have said, "Great things are done by a series of small things brought together." We do not change the world. We do not make a difference because we do big, grandiose things. Well, sometimes we can. But really, the way we make change in our lives, in our relationships, in our communities is by the small things that we do over and over and over again. Maya Angelou said, "Courage. You develop courage by doing small things. Like just as if you wouldn't want to pick up a 100-pound weight without preparing yourself. You do small things." The acts of kindness, the acts of generosity, the acts of resisting hatred, the acts of choosing understanding over violence, the acts of building friendship, conversation by conversation, the act of voting not just for presidents, but for judges and school board members and dog catchers and sheriffs. All of these small actions and so many more, things we choose to do every day, and it may feel like days and months and years maybe go by, and it looks like you've been doing nothing, but slowly over time something big happens, change happens, justice happens. Booker T. Washington wrote, "Success in life is founded upon attention to the small things rather than the large things, to the everyday things nearest to us rather than to the things that are remote and uncommon." Things happen not only because of grand statements and gestures, but because of small choices for kindness and care and thoughtfulness and restraint and silence and listening, conversation, generosity, choices for love. Got an email from the Southern Poverty Law Center yesterday, and it started with this sentence: "Big wins take time, and the road to each success is paved with little victories." Remember what Bryna shared from Stephanie Pearl McPhee. There's other people, though, people who understand the concept of cumulative action, and those people are different. Those people have learned somehow through experience or education that a small action isn't futile if it's combined with many other small actions. And these people will indeed take a small action or make a small gift because they know their little piece is an essential part of something big. And that points to something else about knitting blankets. You don't just have to knit the blanket whole cloth, stitch by tiny stitch. There is at least one other way. If you're a quilter, you might know where I'm headed. You don't have to knit that massive rectangle or circle all of a piece. You can knit lots of smaller pieces, squares, triangles, hexagons, lots and lots and lots of smaller pieces, one by one. Think about those little squares we shared at my installation, one by one, and then sew them all together to make a patchwork. Often this is how really big blankets are made, because knitting a king-size blanket all on one needle can be a colossal chore. You need a really long needle, and the yarn can get really, really heavy in your lap. So you knit it in small chunks that you seam together. Also, knitting a blanket all in one piece tends to be a solitary act of creation and of love. But in pieces, I know a group of men who have been knitting together for years. Years and years of sharing lives with each other while stitches turned into hats and scarves and socks and shawls. And one of their number got really, really sick. And they wanted to help take care of him. And so they made him a blanket. Each of them knit a square of a certain size, and then one of them stitched them all together. And their friend had a blanket to keep him warm when he underwent treatment, a blanket to remind him of their love and friendship while he recovered. Taking a small action that becomes huge in cooperation with your community, wrote McPhee, is a remarkable way for people to know that they are actually taking an action big enough to create real, tangible change and difference in the world. To be someone who is shaping that world, to lift the feeling that nothing matters, that you can't do anything, it's all out of your control. It's not. It's not at all, she writes. You're just not going to do it by yourself. We don't do the work of change alone. We don't have to face the struggles and anxieties of our world alone. This is why we are in community. This is why we actively nurture communities like this one, where we can share our worries and our triumphs, where we can combine our small actions, helping disadvantaged folks do their laundry, sharing socks with those who live on the street, school supplies with those who need them, volunteering to help people to vote their values, telling our stories to each other, learning more about our neighbors, donating money so that students have scholarships. This combines all of our actions into the larger effect of change, of sharing justice and in love in a world desperate for them. In response to the shooting at a rally yesterday for one of our candidates for president, the Unitarian Universalist Association issued a statement that in part said this: as we prepare to meet this moment, we must return to our spiritual grounding and faithful practice. Take a breath, reflect together, wait for emerging truth over quick speculation, anchor yourselves in communities and relationships that foster resilience, liberation, and strategy, cultivate nuance and seek deep wisdom, political analysis, and spiritual grounding, because misinformation will be rampant. Anchor yourself in communities and relationships that foster resilience, liberation, and strategy. This is what we do when we see the size of the fabric of justice and love and change that we need to knit. When we see the size of the cloth, as Naomi Shihab Nye wrote, when we see that and we know that we cannot encompass it all at once or all on our own, we have to understand that the blanket of safety, the blanket of peace, the blanket of justice, the blanket of love, the blanket of resistance, that blanket is made stitch by stitch, row by row, small act by small act, accumulating over time into beauty and safety and connection. that the blanket is made square by square, person by person, committing their own small but crafty piece to the making of something larger and more nurturing than any of us could make alone. So let's get stitching. May it be so. We're going to sing again in a moment. We're going to sing Weave and Spin. You'll notice there's a part 2 up there. Take a deep breath. You're okay. I want to tell you a little bit about this song. Starhawk wrote this, and she said that it came from a multicultural ritual they did in 1993. There was ancestors of many cultures rituals sponsored by Reclaiming, which was their pagan group, and other Bay Area groups, San Francisco area groups. And Starhawk said she came up with this idea of weaving a basket. She said they had altars to many different ancestries and different cultures, and each altar had a different stripe of cloth. You could go to the altar, tell your story or hear your story, and take a strip of cloth, and as part of the ritual, they tied the strips together and danced the spiral, danced into the center, and wove a multicolored basket of our visions, she wrote. It feels a perfect song for this service today. But I'm going to sing you the second part. If you can't handle it, that's okay. You can go back to the first part. But it goes like this. Can I have that D minor again, please, with it? Strand by strand, hand over hand, thread by thread, we weave our web. Try that with me. Strand by strand, hand over hand, thread by thread, we weave our web again. Strand by strand, hand over hand, thread by thread, we weave our web again. Strand by strand, hand over hand, thread by thread, we weave our web. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this. We're not going to try, we're going to do it. Channel Yoda. There is no try. There is only do. We're all going to sing Weave and Spin that first part together twice. And then I'd like this half of the room to peel off and sing the second part, strand by strand. You start on exactly the same note as this part starts, okay? So all of us together on the Weave and Spin, and then twice, and then this side is going to pop off, and we're going to keep doing Weave and Spin, okay? Does that feel okay? Here we go, weave and spin, weave and spin. This is how our work begins. Mend and heal, mend and heal. Take the dream and make it real again. Weave and spin, weave and spin. This is how our work begins. Mend and heal, mend and heal. Take the dream and make it real. Strand by strand, weave and spin. Hands is all our hands. Thread by thread, mend and heal. Take the dream and make it real. Strand by strand, weave and spin. This is how our hand begins. Thread by thread, heal. Take the drum and make it once more. Strand by strand, weave and spin. This is how our hand begins. Mend by thread and heal. Take the drum and make it real.
Give yourselves a hand. That was really good. Congregational news for July 14th, 2024. Kevin and Frank send greetings from Idlewild today, and for the rest of the summer, they will be there. So they say, come on up and visit sometimes. Folks, their numbers are in the directory. This month's topic for the Healthy Aging Support Group is Poisoned and Addicted: Why We're Sick and Overweight. If you eat and care about your health, you need to know this. The meeting will be this coming Wednesday, July 17th at 10 a.m. in the community room. If you have not been before, please sign up on the round table in the foyer for additional information. This is just for me. Don't bring snacks. From social justice. Sue's smiling. Okay. I'm holding up the pencils and the index cards. Can you believe that the students in the East Valley will start a new school year in mid-August? The Social Justice Committee asks you to bring backpacks and school supplies to UUCOD, which will be taken to Galilee Center for distribution. There are lists of requested supplies in the lobby, or you can click on the school supplies list link in Friday's newsletter article on the backpack drive. Your donated items can be dropped off in the box in the UUCOD lobby through Sunday service, July 28th. So you have 14 more days. If you want to carpool to Galilee Center to help fill or distribute the backpacks, the filling party date has changed to Wednesday, August 7th. The distribution at Galilee Center will be Thursday, August 8th. You can sign up in the lobby table for one or both activities. See Sue Kaspari if you have questions. Sue, raise your hand. And as always, thanks to everyone who makes these services special, from the greeters to the kitchen staff, to the AV team, to our wonderful pianist, and our even more wonderful minister. Now, if you'll join me as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Justice Sandra Day O'Connor said, "We don't accomplish anything in this world anything in this world alone. And whatever happens is the result of the whole tapestry of one's life and all the weavings of individual threads from one to another that creates something. Knowing the responsibility and joy of knitting together a life, a community of justice and love, knowing that rests in our hands. Go in peace, my friends, to love and serve the world."